The lecture hall aboard the Galactic Academy's orbital campus shimmered with crystalline light. Rows of students filled the amphitheater, their scaled, furred, and metallic faces reflecting a spectrum of worlds and species. The air hummed with quiet tension as Instructor Velran entered, carrying something small in his four-fingered hands. It was a cube. A strange one glinting under the lights, covered in tiny geometric patterns that twisted when he moved it. "Today," Velran announced, his voice calm but resonant, "you will all be tested on adaptive reasoning. This device is a puzzle box crafted by the Academy's engineers. It requires logic, perception, and patience to unlock," the students murmured among themselves. Each year the reasoning test was a challenge, but the puzzle box was infamous. Last year no one had managed to open it. Velran set the cube on the front table. "One of you will attempt it now. The rest will observe. When you think you understand the method, you may record your hypotheses." He let his gaze drift across the class. The front row held a collection of bright young minds, brilliant members of old civilizations. And there, sitting quietly at the edge of the row, was the new arrival, the human. He was young by galactic standards, plain in appearance with brown hair and a calm face. His name was Daniel. Velran gestured to him. "Human, you will begin." A low ripple of amusement spread through the room. The student beside him whispered in a high, buzzing tone, "Instructor, are you sure? The humans only joined the Academy 3 cycles ago." Velran nodded. "Yes, let us see how he fares." Daniel rose without hesitation. He approached the table and looked at the cube. It was about the size of his palm, the surface patterned with grooves and shifting lines. He turned it slowly once in his hand. The class leaned forward. Velran clasped his hands behind his back. "This puzzle has 4,000 configurations, none of them obvious. To open it, one must perceive the underlying logic." Daniel nodded. "Understood." He sat down before the table but didn't lower himself completely. His fingers moved across the cube. He pressed a few edges, rotated a panel, then another. A soft click sounded. The room fell silent. Daniel looked at the cube again, pressed a section near the top, and turned it a quarter rotation. Another click. Then with one last motion, the cube unfolded like petals, revealing a glowing center. The entire hall froze. Velran blinked once. The cube had opened. Daniel looked down at it, then back up at the instructor. "Is that it?" he asked simply. Velran's voice came out quieter than intended. "You solved it before sitting." Daniel shrugged slightly. "It wasn't too hard once you noticed the rotation pattern repeats on the corners. The markings line up like a 3-dimensional code." The students broke into an uproar. Some argued, others hissed disbelief, and a few stared in awe. Velran stepped forward slowly. He examined the open cube himself. The mechanism was correct. The pattern aligned perfectly. It had taken the engineering division a week to calibrate it. He looked back at the human. "How did you recognize it so quickly?" Daniel smiled faintly. "It reminded me of something my grandfather used to have. A wooden puzzle box. Different material, same principle." The instructor straightened. "You solved it through comparison to a primitive artifact." "Maybe, but puzzles are puzzles, right?" Daniel said. The class quieted again. Velran turned toward the rest of the students. "Observe this. Logic does not always come from complexity. Sometimes it comes from familiarity, from a mind trained to see simplicity in chaos." A tentacled student raised one limb. "But instructor, that pattern isn't even linear. It shifts with orientation. You need spatial intuition beyond ordinary computation." Velran looked back at Daniel. "Human, have you been trained in multidimensional reasoning?" Daniel shook his head. "Not really. But I like puzzles." It was an innocent answer, yet it carried weight. The instructor decided to continue the lesson. "Then let us expand the challenge. The box has another form." He touched a panel on the table, and the cube reconstructed itself, forming a more complex pattern. "This is the advanced configuration. I challenge any of you to open it." A dozen students volunteered at once. Velran selected 3 of the brightest. They approached eagerly, taking turns pressing, twisting, analyzing. After 20 minutes, the cube remained sealed. Daniel watched quietly from his seat. Finally, Velran said, "Human, would you try again?" Daniel rose, approached, and examined the new form. The other stepped aside. He turned it in his hand, then looked at the instructor. "May I?" Velran gestured for him to proceed. Daniel rotated the cube twice, paused, then aligned two edges with his thumb and forefinger. His eyes tracked the faint etching along one side. He pressed a sequence of panels, shifted a small groove, and the cube unfolded again. The hall gasped. Velran was speechless. He leaned closer. How? Daniel placed the opened cube back on the table. You said it was advanced, but it followed the same pattern as before, only mirrored. You can tell from the way the lines reverse. Velran's crest trembled slightly, a sign of disbelief among his species. Mirrored. That would require instant recognition of inverted structure. Daniel nodded. Yeah, humans use mirrors a lot. A ripple of laughter broke the tension, but it wasn't mocking this time. It was astonished amusement. Velran stood in silence for a long moment, then spoke in a tone of respect. The humans. Always full of unexpected simplicity. He dismissed the class early, though most stayed behind, eager to speak with the human. Daniel remained calm, answering their questions modestly. But word spread fast. By the next day, everyone in the academy had heard about the human who solved the impossible cube before he even sat down. Some called it luck. Others called it instinct. But among the instructors, a quiet discussion began. What was it about the human mind that worked differently? Velran found himself replaying the scene over and over. It wasn't only the speed, it was the confidence. Daniel hadn't hesitated. He had simply seen the answer as if it were obvious. He decided to test the theory further. The next week, Velran invited Daniel to his research chamber. The walls were lined with holographic interfaces and simulation panels. I would like your help, the instructor said. We are studying problem-solving across species. You may assist by attempting a few tests. Daniel agreed without hesitation. The first test involved abstract shapes that needed to be matched under rotating conditions. Most species struggled because the program altered dimensions mid-sequence. Daniel solved it in seconds. The second test involved predicting motion through random fields. Again, Daniel performed flawlessly. The third test, however, was different. It presented a moral dilemma embedded in a logic sequence. Velran expected the human to hesitate. Instead, Daniel analyzed the situation quickly and gave an answer that balanced logic and empathy in a way no algorithm could predict. Velran recorded everything. When the tests were done, he asked, "Do you know why you solved these so quickly?" Daniel thought for a moment. Maybe because I don't overthink it. I look for patterns, but I also think about what feels right. Velran found the phrase intriguing. Feels right? You apply emotion to logic, Daniel nodded. Sometimes that helps. We humans learned that reason alone doesn't always work. You need a bit of intuition. That concept shook Velran more than the cube had. Across the galaxy, most advanced species had long separated emotion from logic, but the human combined them naturally. Velran wrote in his notes, human cognition integrates emotion as a heuristic amplifier. This may explain their adaptive capacity. The experiments continued for months. Each time the results were the same. The human excelled not because of higher intelligence, but because of flexible thought. One day, the Academy's chancellor arrived to observe. A tall being of crystalline form, the chancellor regarded Daniel with polite curiosity. You are the one who solved the impossible cube, Daniel smiled. That's what they tell me. The chancellor gestured to the table. I have a puzzle of my own. It has remained unsolved for over a century. It was larger, a sphere of shifting plates. As it turned, the surface emitted light patterns that changed rhythmically. Daniel approached. Can I touch it? You may. He examined it for a moment, tilting it under the light. It's beautiful, he said, then he began to work. His fingers traced the motion of the plates, not forcing them but following their natural path. The room watched in silence. Then softly the sphere clicked. The light patterns aligned into a perfect ring glowing steadily. Velran felt his chest tighten. The chancellor stared. You have done what none have achieved in a century. Daniel set the sphere down. I just noticed the light pulses matched a rhythm, like music. I followed the beat. Music? Velran repeated quietly. Daniel nodded. Where I come from, we use rhythm to find patterns. Sometimes thinking is like listening. The chancellor bowed slightly. Perhaps we have much to learn from your kind. After that day, humans became a subject of academic fascination. The Academy began to incorporate human pattern recognition into their curriculum. New theories emerged, suggesting that humanity's uniqueness lay not in superior intellect, but in adaptability born from chaos, emotion, and curiosity. Velrun often watched Daniel from afar, studying his interactions. The human laughed easily, approached problems with humor, and showed kindness even when others doubted him. Those traits, Velrun realized, were as powerful as any logic. One evening, after most students had left, Velrun approached Daniel in the workshop.